Hey y'all, it's Casey Kasem bringing you a brand new episode of Get Real with Casey Kasem. On this week's episode, I bring you the amazing Lauren Carpenter, who you can find on Twitter at StepMomLauren. She's a writer for the Fantasy Footballers, Fantasy Pros, and Roto-World. She also guest stars on probably every single one of your favorite podcasts. We talked about all kinds of stuff on this pod. Thanksgiving, working from home, how she manages to do everything she does, watching college football, and so much more. You can follow me on Twitter at TheCaseyKasem, and you can also follow the pod on Twitter at GetReal_pod. You can find my writing over with the Fantasy Footballers and with Fighting Chance Fantasy. This podcast here is a proud member of the DAP Network. You can follow the DAP Network at DAP_network on Twitter. Go listen to every podcast that they put out because there are some wonderful pods on that network. And now I bring you my interview with Lauren Carpenter.
What's going on, girlfriend?
Hey, not much. Just hanging out. How are you?
Oh, good. I'm fried.
I bet.
Oh, I hauled ass on my waiver article today for the Ballers. And I was like, I'm like, sorry, Brooks, I'm not going to be like, I have to get this in by this time because I got to hop on Fantasy Bros. And they're like, don't worry about it. So wait. I'm like, thank you, Brooks. I love you.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, I know. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go on vacation, so find somebody to write
I
for
know.
me, you know?
That's the beauty about our
team.
We're like, yeah, go for it, get it, girl. Like, we don't really care, but yeah. No, it's nuts. But like, Thanksgiving is so weird because because I have stepchildren and I don't have any biological children.
Yeah,
and so we always do our Thanksgiving on Friday. Well, with COVID, my parents are elderly, as are my husband's parents. So they're in Vero Beach, which is an hour south. And so we're like, are we doing Thanksgiving this year? Can we not? I would love to not do Thanksgiving. That would be awesome. So
yeah.
I write the Friday Daily Dose for Roto-World, so I have to pay attention to all three games so I can write about them until 3:00 in the morning and submit that article. So It's like, yay, cool. But actually, my husband does most of the cooking for Thanksgiving. I only do 2 dishes. He does the turkey and dressing and all that other shit. So we're going to drive down. After I get up on Friday, we're going to drive down to Vero Beach and just deliver food to his parents. But my husband actually isn't feeling well, so we may not even do that. I have no idea. So I'm like,
yeah, it's crazy.
What's happening right now?
My dad's here, and he's like, oh,
yeah, I remember you saying your family was coming in town.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So they're all being, naughty and getting out of their towns and coming to Texas. So.
Well, I live in Florida, so that's totally not naughty. That's tame.
Yeah. We were in Tennessee over in Knoxville and stuff, and I was so surprised at how many people were just walking around normal. Well, all right.
Where are you at right now?
North of Dallas.
Okay, so you're in Texas. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So I thought it was bad here, and then I went out that way, and I was like,
nobody gives a shit. In
nobody
Florida.
cared.
We're like, COVID? Did we have that for
What's
breakfast?
That? Yeah. It's been crazy with the COVID stuff too. So I guess that could jump me into this first question I guess I have for you. Yay.
Yay.
I love questions, and I love you setting me up for it. No. So before I guess I'm going to actually ask you something else before I ask you that question. It's the question that everybody always asks everybody is, how did you get started playing fantasy football?
So I got started playing fantasy football when one of my best friends, his name is Mike Wright. I never say his name, which is so sad because he's the one who got me into fantasy football, and I never say his name. But it's not Mike Wright from the Fantasy Footballers. Different Mike Wright, friend of mine, Mike Wright. He was playing fantasy football. I honestly had never even heard of it. I think it was 7 years ago now or so. And I'd heard of it, but I didn't really play along. But I watched football all the time. But I saw he was setting his lineup, and I was kind of like, yeah, what are you doing? Because I'm nosy and wondering what he was doing on his phone. And he was explaining to me what he was trying to do is set his lineup, and he was debating between this person and that person. And so I ended up following along with his team. I'm like, how'd you do this week? And he's like, oh, yeah, we won, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you know what? Why don't we just start a league with all of our friends? Because this was his college friend, his college friend league from way back in the day. So the rest of our friends were like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So we ended up starting a league, and that's how I even got started into fantasy football. And I ended up winning that very first year, which immediately sparked the addiction of fantasy football because I won, like kind of on accident, but I still won. But I had a really good team based off of real football. It was just ridiculous, but it was so great. And this league that I'm in that he started, he really wanted, it's very much Scott Fishbowl-esque, but he wanted it to be kind of like a real football team. So you have to have an elite quarterback in order to succeed, which is kind of like real football. So we have, but our quarterbacks, it's insane how many points they score. So like in any given week, you could score anywhere between like 50 to 100 points, just your quarterback alone.
Wow.
It's nuts. It's nuts. So it's an absolutely crazy league, but it's super fun. But that was my introduction to fantasy football, was that weird ass scoring. So, but it was fun. Yeah. That's how I even got started. It was super great. That was years and years ago. It feels like forever now.
Yeah. Well, and I'm guessing you can't wait on quarterbacks really in that league.
No, no, those are first off the board, like without even with no hesitation. Those are the first ones off the board, unless you get really lucky and you make a good guess. Like one year, Lamar Jackson was a big one, and he went late because everyone thought he was Lamar Jackson of his rookie year. So you can get lucky, but not often. And they're hard to stream too because we have large benches, so there's not much available on the waiver wire.
But that's fun. A little bit of a different situation is always fun.
Yeah.
How many leagues are you actually in? Do you know?
Oh,
are you
God,
one of those people that counts?
I did, and I think it's still the same. I'm in 15. I actively play in 14. And I think 3 of them are money leagues. So those are the ones I tend to pay attention to first, just because there's money on the line.
Yeah.
But one of them, and I really hate to disparage any fantasy app because, fantasy is fun. But one of them is in a league. I'll just say Fantrax. I hate Fantrax. Like the way they have their stuff set up is so hard when it comes to their mobile app. So I basically told the commissioner, first of all, I got kicked out of the app during the draft. So my entire team was auto-drafted, first of all. So that sucked. So I basically told the commissioner, I'm like, I can't even work this app. I'm out this year. If you want to do this again next year, please don't hesitate to let me know. But it's with a bunch of bigwigs in the industry too. I mean, I think Rosalie Michaels is in it, Smitty's in it, and I'm just like, no, I can't even figure out how to start people with this app. I'm an old crusty curmudgeon lady, and I can't deal with it. So I'm in a lot. It's too many for me though. Meh.
Everybody says that. Well, not everybody. I've had people on the show that are like, I could be in 20 more. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like
do you have a life? Like, do you shower?
That's probably the life. They're in there like setting their lineups while they're like washing their hair. I don't know.
I don't even know how that's. I mean, kudos to them though. I mean, I can't do that because on Sundays I am working all day Sunday. So like because then it's the last minute changes with injuries and now it's COVID. I'm like, I have enough brain power to get through like 6 or 7 leagues. Then after that, I'm like, don't care if I lose, whatever. I don't really care.
Nah.
I'm over it.
I asked this question a lot too, and you were talking about Sundays. How is watching football with you on a Sunday?
Normally, it's a hot mess. So before I started working with Roto-World and doing their Sunday headlines, I am the worst tilter imaginable. Like, I am not a pretty football watcher when it comes to fantasy football. I usually get drunk as a skunk, hammered, mad, happy, sad. I go through a range of emotions. For everyone else, they probably think it's pretty funny. For me, it is an emotional wreck. But now that I'm working with Roto-World and I'm doing their Sunday headlines, so basically what that means, for anyone who's not familiar with it, it means I don't like blink or pee for like 8 hours. But what I do is I do what they call the fantasy blog, and starting at 12:30, I publish an article basically called the Week Whatever Fantasy Blog. And I started off with the schedule, inactives, and then we have the NFL Sunday Ticket. Particularly the Red Zone is very helpful with that as well. Plus, we have like 800 TVs. We're like a sports bar at our house, which is very nice. Not really great for the aesthetics, but I don't mind. But yeah it's nice. So basically, I update the article with every big play, scoring play, field goals if they're applicable, turnovers for every single 1:00 game, Eastern time, of course, and then every single 4:00 game live as it happens. It's crazy. So yeah, it's kind of fun because I really get to put my own personality into it, which I don't know if they want or like or not. I just do it anyway, and no one's telling me not to, so I'm going to continue doing it. But yeah, it's kind of fun to put your little quirks in there, like, you know, when so-and-so scores a touchdown and you're like, yeah, like Durham Smythe scored a touchdown. You're like, who? Yeah, because that helps no one.
Nope.
Thank you, Adam Rank. No, it helps absolutely no. And I'll kind of put those little quips in there, which just makes it fun. And I also get to order people around, which is nice because I'm like, food, I require food. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll help. And then they'll go and get me food. But like people who don't do what we do and like constantly just look at the NFL. Sorry, my dogs are barking.
Oh, that's cool.
Don't look at the NFL like we do in this lens of knowing players' names, stats, positions. I will ask like 3 different, and not even 3, sometimes it's 5 teams at one time. It comes in lumps. They'll all like score a touchdown or they'll all have turnovers at the same time. So I'm like, who was that? What team? What's going on? And they're like, oh my God, it was so-and-so for so-and-so. I'm like, that's not even a player. Who are you? Like they have no idea who these players are actually, what their names really are. So I'm like, you know what? Just get off my porch. Like the outside porch TV is now mine. Y'all are inside with the 5 TVs in there. Have fun. Stay away from me.
I like it. I need a porch TV.
I know it is. It's like I feel kind of bad because we do have people over every Sunday because I live in Florida and no one here cares about COVID. And we have food and, you know, have a good time. We do a pretty good job social distancing. There's only about like 4 or 5 of us that are here. Plus I'm by myself on the porch. So no one's around me. But yeah, so we do have people over and it is a ton of fun. But yeah, Sundays are absolutely crazy because then I write the Monday Daily Dose. So then once I'm done with that, if I don't hop on with Josh Norris on their podcast for maybe 10 minutes recapping one of the games, I have to pretend to pay attention to, which I usually do. It's the 4:00 games. If there's only like 2 or 3, it's a lot easier. But and I hop on with him, so I have to have like full hair and makeup done, which for a lady is not easy. It takes a while. And then I'm up until 3:00 in the morning writing the Monday Daily Dose, which is talking about all of the games that happened and then the weekend news. So Sundays are a long day.
It sounds like it. It sounds like all your days are really long.
I basically just vented. You're like my therapist right now.
This is what this is all about. You're not the only person that's come on here and been like, oh my gosh,
I do
let it all out.
What am I doing?
but that brings me to this: is that you write for basically every site under the moon, like or the sun if you're cool like me. But yeah, when you started writing. How did that happen and where were you writing and the whole process that went along with that?
Yeah, I have a kind of a crazy journey. So I have a Bachelor of Journalism from the University of Missouri, which if anyone's not familiar, Mizzou is not just like a podunk town trying to pretend to be cool in the SEC. Okay, we have a really hard journalism school. So I did graduate with a Bachelor of Journalism, magna cum laude. I'll just do that right over there. Yeah, it took 10 years off my life. Thank you, Adderall, for saving my life. But yeah, so I have, I ended up majoring in advertising of all things and minoring in business, but you do have to have a very solid background. But I love to write. That's one of the things I've loved to do. And I also love sports. So after I started playing fantasy football, I of course went on and did all the research and then tried to connect with as many experts in the league as possible. One of them I got lucky enough was Adam Rank. I got to be in a listener league with him from the NFL Network. And in that league that he had created, I connected with another friend, Kyle Robert, who is super awesome. And he ran the podcast for Fake Pigskin. And I just happened to be looking for some research on a Thursday night game and no one had anything for fantasy for a Thursday night game. So I tried my hand at it and was like, you know what, maybe I'll just write my own article. And it basically just came off of finding research to figure out who I should start if there was a startable player. I ended up just kind of scratching the itch of writing because I've always wanted to be a published author, which one of these days I will hopefully finish my book and publish that. But I sent it to our chat group of friends in Adam Rank's league. Adam Rank read it and then Kyle read it and he was like, oh my God, he being Kyle was like, can I put this on Fake Pigskin's website? I was like, yeah, why? It's terrible. I mean, it was really bad. Like I was not expecting this to go anywhere other than basically like a journal entry.
Right.
But it ended up going on the website and they asked me to keep writing a Thursday night preview. So I did. And I listened to the fantasy footballers religiously since I started fantasy football, I should say, since I started playing football. Yeah, you know me, I'm a linebacker. That's what I look like, right? So I was on my way to my mom's house and going to visit her. And I heard on one of their podcasts that they were hiring new riders. And I sped through every stoplight on the way to my mom's house. And I got there and I'm like, don't talk to me. I have to fill out an application. And then I ended up having a link to my work from Fake Pigskin, ended up being able to get hired from the fantasy footballers. And it really just kind of spiraled from there. And all of this, really, I have Adam Rank to thank. And he's been nothing but super duper encouraging and being like, you need to be doing this for a living, which has given me that kind of confidence of saying, okay, when you have constructive criticism, not to feel bad about it, you take that, you learn from it, and you grow and get better and better. And from there, it's kind of taken off. I'm still in the infancy of my career, which is very exciting. But yeah, it just kind of spirals. But that's what's so great about fantasy football is the connections that you can make with people all across the country, all across the world, from these famous people on TV down to the peons like us and other players. It's really fun how it just becomes this kind of family like together. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the community is just so great and everything. And
yes.
I know,
and I feel like it's so much more blind than other industries. I know we're women, and we play fantasy football, and like, of course, we've never played football. Like, I totally get that. But a lot of people, the majority of people that I've come into contact with don't really care that you're a woman.
Right.
They're like, okay, well, stats and about these things, and you helped me once and I won, and that's your credibility. And that's really nice. I feel like it's a very blind industry, which has been pretty great being in the minority when it comes to who writes about fantasy football. I'm not like a middle-aged white guy. Yeah. Obviously.
Preach. Yeah, I feel that. Well, and that's the thing too. So women in the fantasy football industry, I know that is a big hot topic, always is, where, the guys that are out there that are supporting the women and doing the follow trains and everything else. It's really cool to see. When I look at it too, sometimes I'm like, well, I'm not just a woman. I just take that away and blah, 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 blah. How do you feel when somebody brings up your gender first?
I don't mind it so much. And the reason I don't mind it is because so many people still do. And I think that's why, so for me personally, whenever I'm looking at anybody, I mean, I don't see color, I don't see gender. What I see is your personality. I see who you are as a person. Hopefully, if I've got the privilege to be able to know you, and just like your interactions and things of that nature. But so few people actually do that, which is so sad. That's just so sad. So the fact that a majority of people, luckily none that I've really come into contact with, so maybe it's not the majority, maybe it's the minority now. They still find it difficult to believe that because we don't have, outdoor plumbing that we know about football. And I get that, because most women are like, I want to watch Desperate Housewives. And I say most, that's a total exaggeration. I'm being very facetious when I say that. So I think it's refreshing, more so the fact, and it is kind of like a novelty, if you will. But when anyone tries to accuse me of getting to where I am because I'm a chick, I really want to say, like, really? Because I slept my way to get my position. I work from home, you idiots.
Yeah, right.
Go away.
What do you want from me?
Okay.
Exactly. And nowadays there's like so many more women that are coming up into the industry, and a lot of even start just now getting their feet wet in it.
Yeah.
What kind of advice do you have to the women out there that are kind of nervous to come join the quote unquote boys club?
Yeah, it's not a boys club anymore.
Exactly.
It's not. And maybe it really never has been. And those people who think it's a boys club, get them out of your life. There's absolutely no reason in any aspect of your life. Get that negativity out of here. Be gone. You be you. My piece of advice is always be kind, always be encouraging, and always stand up for yourself. Those are those things that just make you into a good person no matter what, but especially on social media and those platforms, because people gravitate towards good, kind people. And that's what I try to be anyway. Sometimes it doesn't always work, but I do try. So yeah, and that's my piece of advice. Don't be afraid. Get it done, and just, act and carry yourself as you are just as good, if not better, than everybody else in this industry. And people will see you for that. And yeah, just be one of the guys, because eventually maybe this will be, hey, I'm going to be one of the girls and be talking about this. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to take constructive criticism, even if someone is super negative and mean about it. See what it is maybe that they're trying to say. If it applies, great. If not, to hell with them. Get that out of your life.
Word. Agree. Like for real, you don't need that negativity.
No, you don't.
You're doing this for fun anyway, first and foremost.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you're trying to have fun. And then, making a career out of it and getting to do all the cool stuff is just kind of an added bonus that you get.
Bonus.
So I touched on, and you touched on how many sites you write for. So you write for the Fantasy Footballers, Fantasy Pros, and Roto World. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how did you decide I'm going to do all of this?
Okay, so this is another funny one too. Okay, so I no longer write for Fake Pigskin. I can't.
Yeah, right. Too much.
Because I also run my own business. I build websites for small businesses.
Cool.
So I've actually been scaling that down a little bit. I'm not growing that like actively. I'm just maintaining the clients that I have now. Otherwise, I think I would not have any sleep at all. But so it all kind of connects with each other, kind of back to this whole social media thing, why it's so important to be a good person no matter what, but especially on social media, because that's how you get your connections. So obviously I started with the Fantasy Footballers. You and I are there together. And then that kind of grew into the presence that I had and the fact that I've had the confidence that I could do this and I knew what I was talking about, because sometimes it's scary. You can look at all these stats, but maybe you sound like an idiot, or maybe the way you saw something wasn't really right. It doesn't matter. It's fantasy football. It's educated guessing. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
But I went on to Fantasy Pros, who I've also followed for a very long time. And I really wanted their like expert tools, like the tools that they use like for ranking and stuff. I'm like, I want that. How do I get it? And I had to apply to be an expert. But they're like, well, because you're affiliated with the Fantasy Footballers, we really can't have you on as like an expert unless you were separate, like a separate entity. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I get it. They're like, but why didn't you write for us? I was like, oh, okay, sure.
There you go.
That's how that went. I was like, okay. So yeah, I basically applied, if you will. So got picked up with them, which was very exciting. And then from there, Roto World actually contacted me and recruited me to be on their team as a freelance writer. So that's kind of how all that really spun into place, which was very cool.
That's really rad how that worked out. Like,
yeah,
which is so cool. And I mean, and see, like, I know there are a lot of people that are kind of like scared to even like try to apply or try to put themselves out there like that. And then you're over here doing like a gazillion things. So it's pretty cool to see the different, you can do
it. You can do it.
And you said you work from home.
Yes.
Do you think that helps like so much? Or I know you said that you think that you wouldn't be on any sleep whatsoever if you had
it really does. It does. Working from home is one of the things that has been just so beneficial. So I've been working from home now for over 10 years, and I went from like a full-time office job to quitting that to start to build websites and kind of build my own business. That's really where I hate offices, like just straight up. I can't. Like, give me working from home remotely any day of the week. I mean, I'm sure most people would agree with me on that one. And the most of it is having a husband like mine who is just 110% supportive of basically anything that I want to do. So he has been really supportive in it as well. Because I think it would be tough if, my spouse was like, why are you spending so much time doing that? When you do podcasts late, or, you don't have time to go do these other things because you're working, doing so many different, hats that you don't have time to spend with your significant other, which is also a very important thing as well. But working from home has definitely been one of the greatest aspects about basically owning my own business, I guess, first, but then being able to kind of take that further step into fantasy football for sure.
That's super awesome. I'm
very lucky. I am very lucky.
We got to work remotely for a little bit while, I got to work from home for a few months because of COVID and everything. And then when they made me go back, I'm like,
I know. I feel you, girl.
So usually I'm off at 5, and then I got to come home and stress about the one article I have to write that week.
Yeah, but it is a real thing. It's hard. Writing is hard. It is not easy. It's so when these writers that you see, putting out this content, especially off of a very fast turnover, that is a lot of work. And that comes at the expense of, like, for example, you have to come home at 5. Well, then you need to spend time with your significant other. And, there's dinner to be made. There's just alone time to have with each other. If you're single, maybe that's a different story.
Right.
I'm not sure, but it is a sacrifice. And then if it's not, and you wait until like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, you're going to be up until super late. and then you're going to be lacking sleep to go to your day job when it comes in the morning. So many people put in just a ton of time and a ton of work and really don't get a lot of money back for it. This is a labor of love. This is what fantasy football is. And it's hard work, and it's no joke.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't even imagine being on as many. I mean, you were on a podcast right before you came on this podcast. You got probably a million other ones that you're going to be on this week, I'm sure.
It does kind of feel like that sometimes.
Well, since Thanksgiving is coming up, I know this episode's going to come out a ways away, but since Thanksgiving is coming out, how is Thursday? How is the Thanksgiving games for you when it comes to fantasy football writing, and then just in general being at home?
Yeah, I am so lucky. So I know we talked about this before, but the way we have our family structured is I'm a stepmom. That's why my handle is Stepmom Lauren. I don't have any bio children, as we call them. I actually heard somebody refer to their stepkids as skids. I'm not sure if I like that term or not, but my stepkids, generally I feel like it's important for them to have those holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas to spend with their mom. So we always celebrate them a day after. So we're always doing Thanksgiving on Friday, and then we're doing our Christmas with the kids on the 26th. So it's actually kind of nice. I don't really have to worry about anything except, not getting too drunk during Thanksgiving that I totally mess up the casserole I'm prepping to cook the next day. So those have always been pretty good. This year is going to be a little bit tougher, but not so much because I'm so used to doing it now. But for the Friday Daily Dose, instead of covering, one Thursday night game, I have 3. But then again, on Monday, I cover all of the games on Sunday. So it's really not too much of a different deal for me on Thanksgiving. But I mean, what food and football and some cocktails, you can't beat that. And no stress at all. It's just me and my husband, and he does a ton of the cooking. I make 2 dishes. Yeah, that's it. He does most of it.
I don't do anything. So.
I'm just okay. I take some notes. I have my Tito's and club soda, cranberry, splash of ginger.
There you go.
Make my stuffing and a green bean casserole. I'm good to go.
Nice. I mean, that sounds like a perfect day.
It is. And Christmas is the same thing because we literally cook the exact same thing for Christmas. So, so it's pretty good.
There you go. That works. And you were, I mean, I might come over. I know
anyone is more than welcome. Anyone is more than welcome over at the Carp household. We have an open door rule. We love having people over. We love entertaining. So for sure, more than welcome. Anytime you come to Florida, you let me know, girl.
I will. You were talking about your stepkids. How did they feel about you being so involved with fantasy football?
Well, my oldest, she doesn't really care. Never really been a sports kid ever. They're both very off the charts IQ intelligent. So that's more like robotics and math, which is to me just the Dante's Inferno. That's straight up hell. Don't give me numbers. Unless it's in statistical sheets that I can have a breakdown analysis and look at numbers, that's fine. Don't make me add them. That does not work. No. The only thing I can do in my head is calculate a tip because I was a waitress. That was it. Don't ask me to do anything with numbers. So the second is she is a little bit more into the sports. She didn't play too much. She did play soccer. She played basketball. And she's also super math oriented. She is in Florida right now, and she's I think it's I can never remember. It's dual majoring in engineering, civil and structural. She's probably going to graduate with her master's. The child both of them are just ridiculously smart. I feel dumb when I'm around them all the time, which is a good thing. But sometimes she says it's funny because she's really into college football because she's a Gator fan now, and they'll talk about fantasy football. She's like, "Oh yeah, that's my stepmom." And it's kind of funny. She's really proud of me about it. But other than that, the rest of my family, except for one of my brothers who I actually set his lineup for him, don't tell anybody. The rest of them are just yeah, okay, whatever, fantasy football. Okay.
Yeah. Come on, guys. We have to have something. So let us have
I know.
Yeah. Well, you said you were talking about college football too. Do you pay attention to college football, or is it primarily just the NFL?
I do. I pay attention to college football for the fun of it and the joy of it. I've always loved college, actually more than the NFL. As someone who played sports my whole life, so I played, soccer, basketball, volleyball, leagues, softball. I can't, 4 of them. I always get them all confused because after I've said one, I forgot the first one that I said. And I also rode horses. Like that was my whole life was sports. So I'm a very competitive person, but I never got paid to play sports. So the competition that I know is from the heart. And that's what you see these college kids doing. No, I don't watch college so I can start doing Devi leagues or even Dynasty, which I don't like. I do not like Dynasty.
That, so.
No, I can't get into it. I guess I'm so like instant gratification and like here and now that like Dynasty is beyond me. I can't wrap my head around it. But I do have 2 Dynasty leagues, and I'm actively looking for someone to help me with them. So maybe I'll hit you up with that, Casey, if you're free. So
I might have too many leagues.
I know, exactly. That's the problem, too. I just have too many leagues. Yeah. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, I do like watching college football just for the fun and joy and love of watching college football because fun things happen during a college football game. I love it. It's a great Saturday when you got some really cool lineups up. Plus, I'm a big Mizzou fan, obviously. So I love watching my Mizzou Tigers, even though in the SEC, it's been a struggle, but gotta love the heart in it. And so, yeah, I do a lot. Yeah.
That's really awesome. Was there any kid that you had seen, young adult that you had seen in college?
They're kids.
They're kids. They will always be kids. But is there any kid that you saw in college that I know you're not paying attention to it for Devi or to be in Dynasty leagues, but was there anybody that you saw that when they made it to the NFL, you were like, whoa, and you like kept your eye on that player?
Yeah, I mean, recency bias here is going to be Joe Burrow. Also Drew Lock, just because he's on my team, so I definitely paid attention to that. Jonathan Taylor was a big name, but really, I tend to shy away from rookies in the NFL unless they're like a hardcore running back that I think is going to have some super potential depending on where he lands. But that's all dependent on the draft. Really, rookies for me are a little suspect. But I mean, Trevor Lawrence is one I'm looking at now. Travis Etienne is another one. I am very curious to see what's going to happen with him now. But sometimes, I mean, there are some teams out there that I really like watching. For some reason, I have this healthy obsession with like the Chanticleers, Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. I don't know why. They're always on when I want to watch football, and I'm like, the Chanticleers, yes! And it's awesome. So funny. I started really liking them. To come to find out, 2 of my really close friends here in Florida went there. I was wow. You're blowing my mind here right now. Now I'm a Chanticleers fan. It's meant to be.
Hey, I don't watch college football, so I mean, maybe I'll try to find a team around here that's on TV.
You feel like the Chanticleers.
Yeah, there's plenty of teams around here. I'm sure I can find one.
Exactly, especially in Texas, girl.
Yeah, going back to talking about the fantasy football industry, because I do this podcast because I not only want people to get to know you, which is super awesome. People are, but also because I know there are a lot of people out there that are just getting started that aren't really sure what to do and how to do this and so on and so forth. And you were talking earlier about when you write and you add your little stuff in. Do you think that you have some sort of like trademark or brand that people know you most for?
I'm not sure if that's a really good question. I would have to ask people that like read my stuff. I tend to have a certain voice, which can be a bad thing because there's a big difference between speaking and writing. And you want to try to have a marriage of both, because when you read a written word and say a written word, they're 2 completely different things, but you really do want to show your personality through your writing. I tend to find that it's mostly sarcasm that I have in my work quite a bit. I also have way too much passive voice, which I'm really trying to work on. Rest in peace, Dr. McCord, my English teacher from high school. But I don't know if there's like a particular trademark that I have. I'm not sure. I think it's just mostly the sarcasm that I put in there is like, oh yeah, that sounds like Lauren.
Hey, you gotta have something. Well, you sound like Grammarly over here listing off all the, mine's always like sad. You sound sad. I'm like, I
know. And oh my gosh. So a part of this, I will say this too. I do blame my father for a lot of, I correct people's English all the time. It's second nature because my English has been corrected for me by my father. See all that passive voice right there? Because he was an English major, but he's in finance right now with UBS. He's actually really high up in like, investment advisory. Weird. But he's been correcting my grammar since I could talk at like 2. So this has been ingrained with me that if you hear something that is not correct, you immediately have to fix it. I blame my father for that obnoxious trait, which I hate it when people do it, and I find myself doing it all the time. With children, it's okay because children should learn the difference between like Tanya and me or me and Tanya. No, Tanya and I. Take the other person out, and if it sounds like me would go to Disney World, okay, you're not a caveman.
Right.
I would go to Disney. See, it's something like that. Those are simple things you can do for children, but I find it's very annoying when you do that to adults.
Yeah. He gets slapped around a couple of times.
Oh God.
Has anything like super awesome, super amazing happened to you because of being in the fantasy football industry that you would have never in a million years thought, wow, I'm talking to this person or this experience is happening or whatever?
Yeah, everything I'm living right now, I never in a million years thought that I could do and be sitting at where I'm sitting right now, talking to you, writing for basically NBC Sports, which is Roto World, being paid to do so, working at my own pace. These are things that have been a dream of mine to do. That really is something I can't believe. And also being able to, be like guys on TV like Adam Rank. I'm like, I hung out with him last year in Vegas. We're in a league together. Like we're friends. It's things like that I never would have thought, and I never would have thought that people would be coming to me asking for advice on how to do things. And just real quick, I realized I didn't fully answer your previous question.
That's all good.
It is really hard when you're just starting out. And what was so difficult for me first starting out, because I have the skills in writing, I have a journalism background and I love to write. I've had since I was a child, is where do you find all your research? That was the hardest thing for me to really nail down. And I'll tell you where I find mine. It's sites like Roto World, player profiles. It's stuff like Fantasy Pros and the Fantasy Footballers. I'll plug those because I work for all of them. Yes, don't call me a homer. They write my paychecks. That's how it goes. But, other stuff like Pro Football Focus has a lot of information. It can be very overwhelming if you don't know what you're looking for. So don't be afraid if you're like, I don't know what to look for. Everybody gets that way. It's like cross-eyed because they have every possible piece of data imaginable, but you have to pay for a lot of it. And when you finally know exactly what it is that you're looking for, Pro Football Reference, PFR for short for people in the biz, is one of the best sites that I've found to really get a comprehensive look on player data that has really opened my eyes to be able to gather that together and then make a projection moving forward. So those are just a couple of websites that I really like to use. Like I think Fantasy Football Data or Fantasy Data is one of them. RotoWire is another really good one. So you can combine all of, even if it's just one piece from here, one piece from there, it's pretty interesting. And in the off season, when we don't have like an article set down that we have to write, we have to think of these topics on our own. And so, sometimes we'll think of a topic, and this, we'll think of a topic, then you go in and do the research and you're like, whoa, way off. This article's changing. Holy crap. And that's kind of the fun of it too.
Well, I like that you brought up those sites because I know that when I first started, I was kind of just thrown into it. Like I was doing it. Ryan had asked me to do it over with Fighting Chance Fantasy, and I said, of course, and then I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. So it's really cool. I had to ask around and find the website.
I was the exact same way.
Yeah. Because you can talk about it a million times, but you don't have things to back it up without like that data there.
Yeah, talking about it is so much different because talking about it kind of disappears eventually into the paragraph that you're making this verbal argument for. The written word is way more like cement. Yeah. You had better had numbers and data to back up what you're trying to argue, especially when you're doing projections for the future. You got to make that case somehow.
And then writing too, like it's like concrete, set in stone, and people will go and read it. And if you're on a podcast and you slip up, people, when I hear it, I'm just like, oh, okay, they just they just misspoke. But if you type something out and it's wrong, somebody's gonna call you out for it.
Oh yeah, every week.
Every single
happens to me every week.
So don't feel bad if you're scared to like start writing and then you're like, well, what if I'm wrong? What if people call me out? Like it happens. Just like
it totally
roll
happens.
with the punches. You just have to do.
Yes. I think that one of the biggest things too is don't be afraid to have a take. Yeah. And your take isn't necessarily wrong. If you have no data to back it up, that might be a situation. But if you have an argument and you have data to suggest that it could be crazy, but hey, it's a take, go for it. This is educated guessing. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. This is educated guessing, pure and simple. And never forget that.
Never. I will make sure that I don't. I will just replay this over and over.
I do it all the time. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen with so-and-so? I'm like, I don't know. If I knew, do you think I would be doing this? I would own a gigantic mansion or 5 in Belize, and I wouldn't even be needing to worry about this if I knew what was going to happen in the future.
Not
it's called the stock market, buddy.
Man, you get me off track. I'm like, what was
I'm sorry. This is what I do. My Indian name is Talks Off Topic. Like if I were Native American, on the bottom of my totem would be Talks Off Topic. I'm very good at it.
But that's the best part of this podcast is I really don't have to do the work. It's just you guys doing the work, and I can just.
And I love talking. Just ask my poor husband.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. Speaking of talking, we're gonna go into that segue. So you do a lot of podcast guesting, and you're really comfortable in front of the camera and in front of the microphone. What kind of advice do you have for people who are like, I know how to talk, I do know how to talk about this stuff, but I'm kind of nervous about like actually getting on a show?
I am nervous before I get on every single podcast, and I've been doing this for 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. Like, okay, so I actually used to sing for quite a bit. When I moved to Florida, that was the only money I made was like gigging at a bar. Mm-hmm. No, I'm not going to sing for anybody. I sound like a dying cat now. It's been a while since that's happened. Now that is stage fright. I can get up and talk to a room of 500 people. I don't care. But there's something about performing under pressure that is very, very difficult. So don't be nervous that you're nervous. That is totally okay. For me, the greatest thing I have is be prepared. Go through some of those talking points that you have in your head. And if you find that you're on the spot, if somebody asks you a question that you really don't know, just say like, I don't really know which way I want to go with that. Or, if you don't remember who so-and-so is playing next week, be like, hey, what's their schedule again? Because you're not supposed to know absolutely everything. And if you do know absolutely everything and you're just spouting off, then it just sounds like people are listening to a robot. When you're talking in front of a camera, in a microphone, on a podcast, it doesn't matter. People really will connect so much better with what you have to say when they hear your personality coming through. So that's really what's been so helpful for me, because people have totally like ignored when I'm wrong, but they seem to like me for some reason and keep coming back for more. Maybe I should see if someone is paying them to do so. I'm not sure, but hopefully it's because I'm slightly entertaining. I don't really know, but it takes a while to get comfortable doing this because that's not easy either. It's not easy, but it does help when you take a lot of pride in your work and you're able to talk about your work. That's just talking about you and the things that you love to do. And plus you're talking about a sport you love to watch and about something that you love to participate in. So it's not so much a test to you, it's a testament to what you love to do. That was so deep, man. I should pat.
Oh man, I feel like this is going to be like the magical episode that just like makes everybody. Whoa.
I just created a black hole.
Have you ever had a podcast or thought about starting your own podcast?
I have, and I think about it a lot, and I instantly get like, oh God, it's because and this probably more than many people, doing a podcast is a lot of work, and we talk about how much work goes into fantasy football. There's not a lot of room left over when it comes to time and energy, but that is definitely something I would love to do moving forward. I don't think I could really do it by myself though. I would definitely need to have at least one other person, and maybe not necessarily like right this minute. It may take a little bit more time to develop. And this year has been so weird. I feel like it's impossible to get a good routine nailed down because it's just been such a weird year. So maybe in the next couple of years, that'll be something that I really like to move forward to. But there is something really fun about being a guest on a pod as opposed to having to run one.
100%.
Because being a guest is way less work.
Way less. That's what I was telling my wife. When I started this one up, I was like, well, at least this one's not time sensitive, because when you do a fantasy football podcast, like to edit it and get it out and everything, you have to like do that boom, boom turnaround because Cam Newton's going to get signed before your episode goes out or whatever.
Yeah, and that's exactly. So not only do you have to prepare with your topic of the day and what it is that you're going to talk about, which takes a lot of time, then you have to get, a guest if you want to have a guest on, or you have to just get the meat and potatoes of it, which requires a lot of research. Then you have to figure out what you're going to say. Then you actually have to say it. Then you have to go and edit it. then you have to publish it. There are so many things that go along. And girl, I even struggle with my Fireside Friday lives, which I haven't even been able to do for like 2 weeks, although I did get one out on Friday of this last week. But that's just me like winging it, just helping people with starts and sits. And that's even difficult to do. But I do write for like 300 places. So maybe I'll give myself that excuse.
You do. I don't think you have time to not right now. You're right. Once you get I was going to bring up Fireside Fridays actually, because I think that is one of your one of the things that you're known for, maybe not in writing, but like one of your quote unquote, trademark kind of things is your Fireside Friday. It's right behind you. What made you decide that you wanted to do that, and how did that come around?
I have no idea. I actually don't remember what drove me to do. Maybe it was Adam Rank, because Adam Rank used to go live and I used to hop on. Oh, yes. Okay. Now I remember. Just took a minute there. I've only had one cocktail today so far, and it's 4:20. And so he used to go live and answer starts and sits. And then this was after we had already become friends. So I would hop on in the mention, like in his comments, and I would help people with their starts and sits that Rank did not get to. So if that makes any sense. So I would basically help him out in the comments, and he would start saying during his live, and we have, something like, we have stepmom Lauren in here. She's going to help answer your starts and sits. And then some people in the chat were like, Lauren, why don't you just go live? And I'm like, oh, no, I can't do that. No. I was like, wait a minute. Why can't I do that? I was like, because I was scared. So I was like, you know what? Screw that. I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to try this myself, which then turned into, I used to have a wind up Wednesday and then a Fireside Friday, but I just have no time now to do I barely have time to do Fireside Friday. And I don't even have notes prepared anymore. I used to have like a slideshow presentation that would go right up there on my TV. No, don't even have that anymore. I just have the Fireside. So I have that, which is a new one, by the way, new and improved version. Hey. But so that's really how that started, was people, asking me for my help. And I was like, oh, wow, really? So then I just decided to go live with it. Why not? Because apparently I don't shut up and all I do is talk. So I was like, I'll just put it out there. Why not?
At least the stuff you're saying is like genuine and really helps people out. Because I've been, I've watched it before, and I've seen the questions come in and everything, and you answer them just like boom, boom, boom.
Yay! Really thank you. I know, and I see you in the chats, and I'm always like, oh, hey, Casey, yay!
Hey. Yeah, it's really cool. I like to jump in and look at what everybody's doing, and I was really excited to get you on the show because I haven't had a female on. Russ was like, hey, are you going to get any chicks on the show? I'm like, I am. Just
I got you, girl.
Okay? And so, yeah, I was really happy to get you because your work ethic is so like intense. And I think that's just so awesome. Like, it kind of reminds me of like Brandon Marianne Lee when she was like,
yes, and she is like so amazing.
Yeah. That's like why I decided I wanted to like do this kind of stuff, So it's really cool. Did you have anybody? I know you talked about Adam and everything. Did you have anybody else that you kind of like looked at to kind of maybe not model yourself after, but kind of give you some sort of like, hey, that's a cool idea. Maybe I can, run with that or whatever.
That's a really good question. And I'm going to sound like such a narcissist right now, but
nah, you're good.
Really like me.
Yeah.
So this was kind of how I functioned in college and in high school, and like the first couple years working in corporate. I was always like nonstop. And but it was doing something I didn't super duper love to do, but it's always been in my DNA to just like go. And when you're doing something that you love to do, for me, this is fantasy football, especially in season right now, which is super fun. I find that it's a lot less work than it may sound like it is. It is hard work, but when you're doing something that you love, it doesn't feel like you're even working, that old adage, as they say. But like, I don't know, like just to be like non-fantasy or non-football related whatsoever. I think the person that I really look up to the most is going to be my mom. She's the one that has some super duper work ethic. And I've always seen that from her. She is just an absolute beast. And I've also always wanted to be better than my brothers at everything. So if that means working harder and doing more than they do, then give it to me all day long, because I will do it just to prove that I can.
Hey, you know what? Competition and work ethic hand in hand right there.
Yeah, it's super fun. But thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you, Casey. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's just really awesome to see. Like, I've been around for a while. I haven't been in the fantasy industry for very long, but just to see like everybody, like how you guys are just growing and stuff. I'm just going to sit back here and do my thing, but I like watching you guys because there's no way in hell I could do half the shit that any of you guys do.
Oh, Kyla, thank you so much. And you know what? I am so excited too, because for anybody who doesn't know this, get out from underneath your rock, but we are now the two ladies of fantasy footballers. I mean, that is super, because I was by myself before, and then we got you in, and I was like, yeah. And I even said to them prior to you guys joining our Slack, I was like, y'all better watch out, because Casey's going to be all of our bosses in like 10 years. Just so you all know, she's no joke and she pulls no punches. And now the 3 new writers we have are all like 1, 2, and 3 in our fantasy league. Thanks. I warned everybody. Everybody.
We're not going to talk about my very close loss to Kyle.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
I'm doing so bad in that league. Oh,
I'm doing so bad in every league.
I love that team so much too.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, my team is great. And then 2020 real happened. And I was like, my team is like, I'm in another league too. I know nobody cares about this, but I'm saying it anyway. In my home league, I'm like 3-8. Super exciting. I was so stoked after this draft, because I have Josh Jacobs. Oh gosh, who else do I have? Antonio Gibson, Michael Thomas, Kenny Galladay, Chris Godwin, Henry, and I'm 3-8. Wow.
2020 in a nutshell, right there. I'm telling you what. Well, yeah. So this year has been like extremely challenging for like setting lineups and doing all that jazz, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm sure that that's the same way for you when it comes to like doing analysis and writing and everything. How has COVID and this whole like 2020 being very odd affected how you do your work and put it out and all that jazz?
I find that I'm being so much more conservative when it comes to suggestions on like waiver wire pickups and trade targets. And I even found myself doing this prior to like draft season. And it was, instead of taking late round flyers on, you know, guys that may totally miss, as in like, you know, wide receiver boom or bust type thing, I'm like, play it safe and get another quarterback, or play it safe and get another tight end type of situation. And also really avoiding players on the same team, obviously. By that, I mean, instead of getting the backup of your starting running back, get the backup of your opponent's starting running back, which is another theory regardless of COVID. But for this year, I feel like it's almost kind of necessary, just so you can have that edge in there. But I found I've been way more conservative and looking at more safety when it comes to my future lineups. And then using the waiver wire for maybe like one just maybe swing, possibly miss, or home run type of guy. But I feel like I've been way more safe this year because of COVID. And like at any minute, it'll be like game canceled, or like, oh, he may have like at some point eaten in the same cafeteria as so-and-so. Contact tracing. Ugh.
No. Yeah. It makes
or just injuries, because they didn't have any preseason and like no OTA, shortened training camp. So like, I'm sorry, nobody's hamstrings can deal with what these guys deal with without any kind of preparation.
Exactly. And
I mean, my hamstrings can barely handle walking around the neighborhood. So
I walking, what is that? I like sit at my desk all day. I'm not getting up.
I have a 4-wheeler. I'll hop on that and go down the street.
There you go. That's the future of football too. I think.
It is.
There was a question I was going to ask, and now I forgot it. So let me ask you a different question. Darn, maybe it'll come back to me. I have a list, but I don't look at it half the time.
Me neither. It's
good. So you were talking about like your different leagues and everything, and do your friends come to you for fantasy advice? Do you give them fantasy advice? Are they in the same leagues as you?
This is such an interesting question, because there's so many different answers to this. So I do have close friends that do come to me advice. My husband comes to me for advice. In my home league, I have 1 or 2 to 3 that will come to me for advice. The other part of my home league, I still don't actually believe me when I say that I do fantasy football. I'm pretty sure they like don't know what that means. And I'm like, you know, this thing that you play in called fantasy football, I write about it. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's kind of funny. And then I'm in another league where everyone is terrified of me.
Yeah.
And I'm the only girl, which is really funny. And I've never won in their league. The best I've done is second place, like woohoo. And right now I have 5 losses, and they're all like, oh my God, I beat Lauren. I'm such a great fantasy player. I'm like, you ain't special. You're like 1 of 4. Come on, let's go. But yeah, so sometimes I like get like super hate because they're like, "Oh, you think you're an expert?" I'm like, "No, I get paid like an expert." I'm just kidding.
Listen, let me
I
tell
do
you.
I do say that when this person really, really annoys me, but no, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. Sometimes they'll come for me for advice. Usually what I found is that I'm playing in leagues with other industry experts, so it's really
Uh-huh.
nothing special. It's kind of like, okay, we're all here on the same page. It's no big deal. But for my home league, I do have some that really ask me for advice, some that
Yeah.
don't believe me that I actually am doing what I'm doing, and it's just kind of fake, or they're terrified of me. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
Yeah.
I joined a new league this year. It's a bigger money league, and I was really hesitant to do it, but my
And
friend
those
was like,
were always
"Please
the ones where
come."
the people are mean with
They
those
are
money
okay.
leagues.
Hopefully they're not listening to this, but you guys are mean. I'm not doing
Yeah.
well in there at all, just because like injuries have just killed my
Oh
team.
yeah. But you
And it's
should have
like,
predicted that,
well,
expert.
you write for this site, and I'm like, just because you write for a site doesn't mean your fantasy team's going to be 100% every single
Mhm.
week. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's why you separate the writing from setting a lineup. Like
Yeah.
I take my own advice, and I will eat my words, and say I'm
For
sorry.
sure.
And that's a big thing I think nowadays on Twitter is people saying live up to your mistakes and
Yeah.
stuff like that. How do you feel about that? Because there's a lot of people that just want to say, well, I'm good at this, and this, and they ignore the fact that they were wrong about that. It happens to all of us.
Yeah, it does. I do like the accountability. That's always
Mhm.
been something for me. That's something that I will always own up to. Oh my gosh, that's a funny story actually. So there was one of my I sound so like one of my followers. Like I swear to God, I'm not trying to be like that person, but
Ooh,
someone who
girl.
follows me on Twitter had asked me a question on a Fireside Live about whether or not he should start Aaron Rodgers. And I've been very down on Aaron Rodgers. Not anymore, obviously. He has proven to me that he can produce in fantasy. Thank you very much. But I had told him not to start Aaron Rodgers and instead start Carson Wentz. This was before the whole Wentz derailed as far as it
Yeah.
had gone. But it was a really juicy matchup.
Mhm.
Whatever. So when those two games unfolded and Aaron Rodgers threw like 400 touchdowns and Carson Wentz got sacked 400 times, I felt terrible. And I messaged
Right.
him on Twitter and I was like, oh my God, I am so sorry about that take. And he's like, oh, don't worry. I didn't have time to change it. So Aaron Rodgers was still in my lineup. But like, I take it really personally when I get a take wrong because
Mhm.
I really like winning my own leagues. Of course, who doesn't? I really like winning in my matchups. That's really fun. But really, what does matter to me a lot, which is why I do what I do and why I do Fireside Fridays as often as I can, why I spend the time to answer your starts and sits on Twitter and on Facebook, is because I want you to succeed. Because it's
Right.
just as awesome for me to say I helped you win. To see you win and do well makes me feel awesome. Like, so I could lose my week, but I've helped 4 people win theirs. That makes me feel great. Now, if I mess it up and I make you lose, I feel terrible and I will own up to it and be like, I am so sorry, my bad. What I need to apologize. What can I do? It's just, oh,
Yes.
yeah. But when
So
someone is just like, I'm all right all the time, first of all, no, you're not. And yeah, take just, because I'm mad if I lose
Yeah.
based on someone else's advice, it's just, I get
Yeah.
it.
I will brag about being right about something, but I will also be self-deprecating and be like, I'm a why you guys listen to me,
I don't think I've ever I'm trying to remember now. Like, I've never really, how on NFL Network, NFL Fantasy Live, they have like the humble brag, like, see, I told you so. This guy would do
Yeah.
great. I don't think I've ever done that. And it's not because I don't want to, it's because I usually forget what I've
Yeah.
said. You know what I mean? So I'll be
Boom.
like,
Yeah.
because I'm in so many leagues and I make so many decisions and then I help so many people with their
People.
decisions that I was like, wait a minute, I think I told somebody to start that guy and I think it was good. Now I can't remember, but I totally would be tooting my own horn if like it popped into my head when I saw so-and-so have a good game. But normally that's going to be on a Sunday when I don't even have time to eat because I'm doing the headlines. So
Your head's
just
just
know I'm
spinning
thinking about
you. That's awesome. Well, that's what I was going to ask you about too, was the whole advice about, if you want to get involved with the fantasy football community and you want to help people out, but you're scared that you're going to be wrong. Like, and you basically answered it, but like, I know there are people, I know I was like that. So what kind of advice do you have for people who are like, that's the part I don't really want to deal with?
It's okay. It's scary. Nobody wants to deal with being wrong. I especially don't ever want to be wrong. I hate being wrong. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I'm a freaking know-it-all. I crush Jeopardy because I know too much random shit. I am really good at knowing things. So when I am wrong, I hate it. And it's just kind of the nature of the game. Nobody expects someone to be 100% correct all the time. My best piece of advice, and I'm not just saying this because I say it, but I'm saying this because it's true. you can try to lead a horse to water. You can tell somebody why you think X, Y, and Z should start. But at the end of the day, this is that person's lineup. And they need to go with their gut. So you can, if someone comes to me and they say, hey, should I start so-and-so or so-and-so? And I tell them, I think it should be this guy, but you go with your gut. So I can help you, but you're never actually setting anyone else's lineup. So if you give advice, it's on them on whether or not they want to take your advice and start or sit. So that's usually when I'm not really quite sure about a start or sit, I'll say that. I'll be like, look, I'm not really sure. I would start this guy, but honestly, go with your gut. This is a coin toss. That's what I say if I'm not sure. Now, if I am 100% dead on I think this guy is going to have a crush game, then I say it. But if I'm not, I throw that in there because it's true. You have to make a gut call when it comes to fantasy football.
I agree. That's when you said that, I was like, yes, because I'll be like, well, I personally would go with this guy. I'm not saying you have to go with him. And honestly, if you're asking me for advice, you should be asking a few other people. Don't tag us all like in giant, I get 400 notifications, but
yes,
you should, you should be, at least getting a couple of other opinions, even if it's just to back yourself up. Cause I used to do that.
Yeah.
Like, just to make yourself feel better about your choice. And if you're wrong, you're like, well, so was so-and-so. So it's not the end of the world,
Exactly. And I'm in that same boat too. Like you're not just going to take one person's advice. And if you do happen to give that person advice and they're mad at you for said advice, mute them.
Boom.
Just mute them and don't even let that get into your head and discourage you from doing this because that person doesn't need to be in your life. As we mentioned earlier in the show, that kind of an attitude and that kind of a personality does not need to exist where you should be existing in your life, which is reaching forward, going forward, doing things and being aggressive with your stuff. If someone is constantly trying to bring you down, even if it's in such a small way, mute them, move on.
And is that how you deal with trolls? You just mute them? Or
I do. I laugh first and then I mute them. I feel kind of like, I don't know, weird, but like I don't get many trolls and I am very happy about this. I am I don't get any. Well, I don't say any. I do get a few. Like I get a lot of perverts. Like when I go live, like the pervs just always come out, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But usually people in the chats are like, "Get out of here, gross person!" And I'm like, "Yeah, what they said. See you later."
You got a crew to back you up.
Yeah, but I, every once in a while I'll get one, and I just move on, mute it, move on. Don't even care. Because if I cared about your opinion, there's something wrong with me.
Well, no, there's nothing wrong with you. I see. I ask that question a lot too because I have a hard time. Like, you can mute these people and just let them argue with themselves. You don't have to sit there and
don't have to feel bad about it. I know, but sometimes you want to do it.
It's fun. It's fun. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I got a really good comeback. Let me use that real quick. But
that's the fun part about muting them is you can say whatever you want. Mute.
Yeah, mute. Sorry. What do you want? What do you want?
And they're just talking, and you're not saying anything because you don't even see it. Sometimes it is fun to get into that banter, and sometimes the trolls are just a banter. Like I have had a couple of them that have come at me, and I think they were surprised that I responded back. And they actually came back and were like, oh, sorry. Like they didn't think I would read it or something. And I'm like, no, I understand where you're coming from. Here's where I'm coming from. And they've actually turned out to be great followers and they have really interacted with my stuff. Sometimes I think people don't realize that we can see what you're saying if you at us. Like I read it.
I'm sorry. I don't have 1 million followers. So I can see what.
Nor do I.
and I can see what's being, I don't have to go through a whole,
Yeah. My mentions are healthy. But they ain't infinite. So I am reading what you're saying. Trust me. Especially if I see you added me directly. I'm like, what'd he say?
What? To me, I'm like, please don't call me sweetheart.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Ain't nothing about me, sweet.
Before we go, I just wanted to touch on just you in general not touch on you. I don't want to touch on you. So
I'm cool.
This is for the children. No, I wanted to touch on just like in general in life besides fantasy football. What are the things that like put a smile on your face, get you going, make you happy, all that jazz?
Oh man, I am first of all, reading. I'm an avid reader. And I mentioned this before, but like eventually when I grow up, I am 37. Don't judge me. I do want to write a book. I'm a big sci-fi fantasy girl. My particular genre is urban fantasy, which if you haven't gotten a chance to read someone like Ilona Andrews and you're really into that, it's really good. But I'm an avid reader. Those are things that really do it for me. But by far, I am an animal lover. I have 2 dogs, 2 sugar gliders, a cat. My poor husband is not really an animal person, but he knows that I am. So, I love, like, there's nothing better than I love just like in the morning, or maybe, God, if I can squeeze in like a 10-minute, just chill on the couch. I got all my creatures with me. Like, that always makes me super happy. Yeah. And just being around friends and hanging out. I love outdoors. So I'm a big outdoors person. Like I mentioned 4-wheeling before.
Right.
My husband and I have 4-wheelers. We also got really lucky. We found some property pretty close to us. So we have this like POS RV out there that's totally broke down, but it's there and it's shelter. And so we'll go out 4-wheeling, and I love to fish. I love being outside playing golf, and just being active and healthy. I like to exercise when I feel like it, which, who doesn't? But yeah, that's kind of me. So I read, I write about sports. I like to play sports, be outside, and I love furry little creatures.
Very well rounded. There you go. Gotta throw that in there too, right? Yeah, and my husband, I guess. Well,
he's kind of an animal too, so it's totally fine.
Boom, there you go.
Love you,
that
babe.
Works. Okay, well, before we jet out of here, since you're a very, very busy girl, and I'm going to go pretend I'm busy.
Stop.
Go ahead. I will plug all your stuff at the beginning of the podcast and talk about how great this was talking to you and everything, obviously. But go ahead and just like plug all your stuff, and we'll wait another 10 minutes for you to get done with that.
Might be well. Okay, so Lauren Carpenter, and I am at Stepmom Lauren. I'm way more active on Twitter. It's a platform that allows me to answer you quickly. So if you ask me questions on Facebook, it's hard for me to find them because Facebook has totally changed how they're doing their stuff, and it's annoying. And I'm far too old to know how to deal with Instagram, even though I tried. I hate it. Just go on Twitter. That's where you can find me. I have my own website, stepmomlauren.com, where you can find all of my newest articles. Not so much really right at this moment because I'm a few days behind. Sorry about that. But I am a writer for The Fantasy Footballers, Fantasy Pros, and Roto World. And for the in-season work for the Fantasy Footballers, I write the waiver article, which is going to be for us right now. It's week 12. But this is going to come out a little later, so maybe it'll be a different week then, but I'll still be writing it.
There you go.
And then for Fantasy Pros, I write the 5 burning questions each week. And for Roto World, I write the Friday and Monday daily doses, which is a recap of all of the fantasy and football news that happened the day before. On Sundays, I write the fantasy blog, which is keeping you updated with all of the 1 o'clock games Eastern and all the 4 o'clock games Eastern, with touchdowns, big plays, field goals, turnovers, all that fun stuff, so that you don't have to miss a single game, even if you're not living where your game is playing. I got you covered.
That is so awesome. And I know I've been using the word awesome a lot, but like having you on here has been great. I really have enjoyed it. I love you too. Thank you for coming on. And I know that people are gonna they're just gonna come into they're gonna just at you, and they're gonna be like, look, I'm saying nice things to you because I listen to you and you're awesome. So
I love it. Oh, please. And I love answering your questions on social media, guys. I love it. This is why I do this, is to help you guys win. So please do not hesitate to reach out. I absolutely love it. And good luck for everyone, whichever week and whatever you're doing. Good luck.
Yes. All right, guys. So you guys go ahead and follow Lauren and go talk to her. And she's just a great follow. You guys got to. If you're not following her already, you should already be following her. Anyway, I've gone on a little bit too long with my gratitude towards Lauren for coming here. I do appreciate it. And you go ahead, enjoy the rest of your writing, and hopefully you get some sleep in and all that jazz.
Will do. I'm gonna make a freshy cocktail and that's probably watch The Voice.
You do you, girl.
So random, I know.
All right. Take it easy, guys. We'll see you next week.